Hey, here we are in WRMN 1410 AM, Life Experiences with William Pelarenos. And we have a wonderful guest who's got life experiences as a crime reporter for many publications, including the Chicago Tribune for over 15 years. George Houde, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Bill. Nice to be here on this beautiful fall day.
George has covered many crimes, not only crime scenes, but cases. He's sat in courtrooms, he's listened to the trials, and he's reported for many publications. He started as a journalist out at the Milwaukee Journal and went to the Associated Press and finally ended up with the Chicago Tribune for over 15 years, right?
15 years, yes. Before that, I was working at the Courier News in Elgin for 15 years, too. And then before that.
Elgin.
Yeah.
What do you know? Anyways, so as we were talking here, George, I used to run into him at the Rolling Meadows Courthouse as he sat in on many cases. And the last case that I saw you before you semi-retired was a few years back, was the Donnie Rudd case, which is a very unusual trial. Why don't you give a little background on that?
Donnie Rudd, I mean, this is a complicated case, and sometimes it was hard for me to follow it sometimes. But Donnie Rudd was an attorney for Quaker Oats in Barrington. And he was living at that time with a woman, I think they were in Hoffman Estates, living with her and her two children, her two daughters, by a previous marriage. At any rate, Donnie met a young woman at work, and he persuaded her to marry him. So he moved out of the relationship with the woman he was living with, and ended up marrying this young woman. She was 20 maybe, and he was like 33. He was an attorney, originally from Texas. Donnie was originally from Texas. Donnie Rudd, R-U-D-D, and by the way, no relationship to Ron Rudd, who was an engineer for the city of Elgin for many years. No relation. At any rate, Donnie married the young woman. A month later, they're driving along, and in their car, this would be 1973, very old case. And the car ends up in a field. It's discovered. Police arrive. I think it was a Carpentersville police officer first on the scene, although it was a Barrington Hills case. It was just east of the Cook County line on Illinois 68, just east of East Dundee there, actually. So Donnie is cradling his young bride of 30 days in his lap, and she is dead from a head wound. And he tells police that, a driver forced him off the road. They ran into this field. The door opened, she flew out of the car and hit her head on a rock. Well, that's how the report went, the police. I mean, it looked like an accident to the responders. And so she was taken to Sherman Hospital, where the ER doctor pronounced her dead from a probable neck fracture, spinal injury. So they buried the young bride. Her family, of course, is totally heartbroken. Donnie pretends he's heartbroken. He has her buried in her wedding dress, and then over the years continues to go to her relative's house on her birthday or for Christmas. But the other side of Donnie, he moves back in with his girlfriend, collects all of the life insurance. He had upped this young woman's life insurance to the max at her work, collects that life insurance, then becomes a real estate attorney. And marries this woman with her two children, and ends up having a client in Arlington Heights who is going to report him to the disciplinary committee for the ARDC for not performing. She's paying him money, and he's not doing anything for her condo-related complaints. She ends up shot to death. So he is implicated. He's a chief suspect, but there's no evidence against him. And so he's not charged. He's never charged in that murder. However, a real bright Arlington Heights detective, Rich Sperando, later pulls this cold case file on this woman, this Arlington Heights woman who was murdered. He's going through the file and he sees this old accident report that Donnie Rudd was involved in. And he starts looking at that and he looks at some of the old reports and he convinces the Cook County State's attorney to exhume the body of the young bride who was killed in 1973. Now, this is 2011. So it's a very unusual case. He, in the meantime, has been disbarred, basically, in Illinois, moves back to Texas, where he's from originally. The police, Sperando and several other officers, get an arrest warrant for him. They convince the state's attorney that, yeah, we can convict this guy. I think we can mount a case against him. The life insurance, which he maximized without her knowledge, basically. I think he just had this influence over her. She was very young, and and so she believed in him. And you look back and you think, how could this guy do this to this young woman? And basically, what he did is kill her for the insurance money so he could have some money. Anyway, 2011, they go down to Texas. They arrest Donnie Rudd and bring him back to Cook County. He shows up in bond court in a wheelchair, pretending he's disabled and can't do anything. In the meantime, in Texas, he's passing himself off as like an MD and a doctor. And he has this long history of telling stories. Well, I'm not kidding. This guy was something, of telling stories about
Wait, just let me get this right. He's a disbarred lawyer who now says he's a doctor.
Yes, a scientist and a doctor.
A scientist.
Yes. And he did have some science background of some type, but he was never an MD. Never. But he spun all kinds of tales like this. The other problem was that.
Go ahead.
Yeah. The other problem was that he was known to have tampered with his stepdaughter's car, and this came out in the court records, in the trial, that he had tampered with and had put a bomb under her car. So the state's attorney, Maria McCarthy, who's retired now, but a great prosecutor, and his defense attorney actually told me they were kind of leery about going out to their cars after the trial, when he was out on bond during his bond hearings and continuances and so forth, because they'd always check under the cars to make sure it wasn't rigged with bombs. So that's how crazy this was. And he was just kind of this old grandfatherly-looking guy, but had this sinister aspect to him, the other side of Donnie Rudd. So Donnie's charged. He gets a female friend to post, I think his bond was set at $3 million. He gets a female friend to post $300,000 cash bond. So he's released and is out on bond after his arraignment.
So let me get this right. A woman dies. It's classified as a traffic accident death. 30-some years later, it's reclassified as a homicide because they exhumed the body and they changed classification to homicide, correct?
They exhumed her body, and still, she still had her wedding dress on.
Right.
And so they had her body examined by 2 forensic pathologists. Each of them concluded that she had been struck in the head because she had 2 skull fractures in her head, and said it would have been impossible for her to have fallen out of the car and hit her head on a rock and died that way.
Hit the head 2 times on the same rock.
Yeah. So,
okay.
And I think Donnie had found, at the original accident scene, Donnie had found a rock and smeared some of her blood on it because she was bleeding.
We don't know. But with the facts of the case that came out in the court, they tried him based on the change of autopsy from accidental to homicide and the skull fractures.
Yes.
I'm sure the forensic doctors testified against him.
Yes,
And you followed that trial. You were in court, correct?
I was. I followed the trial, and it uh, it was an interesting trial in that, yeah, you had a body exhumed 30 years later, right? And the testimony was that he had apparently struck, or she had been struck in the head with maybe a 2x4 or something, and killed. Then the circumstantial evidence was that he had increased her life insurance to the maximum in the weeks before her death. Also, that he had, um, uh, really, what began this was the homicide, the murder of the woman in Arlington Heights in 1992, which was never solved. Was a cold case. So that also came out that he was the chief suspect in that.
They were able to get that in court testimony?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm very surprised it wasn't excluded. But anyways, so it goes to trial. It was a jury, correct?
Yes.
And the jury came back with a finding of
Guilty.
guilty for homicide,
Yes. For murder.
for murder.
Yeah.
So with that conviction, what was Donnie sentenced to?
Donnie was sentenced to 75 years, I believe, in prison. 75 years. And he died in prison. So, and even at his sentencing hearing, he stood up and denied that he had anything to do with the death of his bride, and that it was all a sham, and he was being wrongfully prosecuted. But it also came out in court that in in testimony that he had a twin brother, Ronnie Rudd in Texas, and Ron Rudd testified via video that he never talked to his brother, and that his brother and he were estranged because Donnie Rudd was just such a horrible human being. So that was kind of astonishing, right? To have family members say that about your twin brother.
Not too astonishing. I'm aware of a lot of family members that don't get along, especially
Yeah.
in family gatherings.
Well, with the
Matthew, we've discussed these
Yes.
Thanksgiving events where they turned to domestic violence.
yeah.
I have a twin, but I don't hate him at all. So
Yeah.
it's
Well, that's
crazy
good.
to think about that.
Well,
Anyways,
and Bill, you've covered cases where a friend, the best friend, kills his or her best friend. I had a case like that, Diana Thames.
yeah. Well, I want to talk about Donnie Rudd because it's so unusual for a case to be the reversed. The autopsy manner of death was reversed, and then somebody's tried and convicted for that crime some 30 years later. So
Right.
there was a big gap. But I remember the family of the victim being on television, and they were happy that it was resolved finally.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know,
It was a long, torturous thing. The astonishing thing to me was that he would show up at his dead bride's family events. Her sister would have events, and he would show up and pretend that he was in mourning still for
you know
her.
what? You never know what's in these people's minds. The
Right.
people do bizarre things. Let's go a couple of these other cases. What's another one you got there?
The Nelson case.
Yeah, let's go that one.
Well, before we get to Nelson, I just want to mention the Brian Peck case, which is an Elgin case, and horrified the Chicagoland a few years ago, 2017, where he killed his mother, dismembered her, put some of her body parts in trash bags, bought a suitcase, put her dismembered trunk in it, and threw it in the Lincoln Park Lagoon. And he was convicted in Cook. It was a Cook County case because it was over the line in Cook County here in Elgin, and he was convicted. But that was just really an unbelievable case that he did. But that's family members. You're right, family members. The Matthew Nelson case was a case in Arlington Heights where young Matt would he I don't know, he went off the rails, got arrested for burglary. His mother had died. His father was a blue collar kind of worker and was trying to raise him and his daughter. Matt thought that he wanted more money. He thought that there was some Social Security money that came from his mother that he deserved. He ends up getting caught for burglary, spending some time in Cook County Jail, meeting a couple guys there in Cook County Jail, and convincing them to go and help him rob his father. So they go out to the house in Arlington Heights. One of the guys' accomplices has a BB gun, a BB pistol. And so they wait in the house, Matthew and his two friends, and the father comes home. They force him into the basement and duct tape him to a chair, demand his wallet, demand his credit cards, have him write a check, free his hand so he could write a check to them so they could go cash it. Then they end up, the two accomplices walk out. Matt goes out to the garage and gets a baseball bat, goes back into the basement, smashes his father's head in, and then stabs him in the neck. Because Matt was 19 or 20 at the time. And then they take off. They leave the father in the basement, and they take off, and they go downtown, rent a hotel room, and party. And Matt returns the next day. Matt had a girlfriend with him. Matt returns the next day. The father is still in the basement, duct taped to the chair. And a friend comes over, says, "Hey, where's your dad?" A friend of the father comes over and says, "Where's your dad?" And the friend kind of can tell something's wrong, and there's a smell to the house. And she calls police. Matt takes off, takes his father's car, and leads police on a wild chase from Arlington Heights across west to the suburbs, ends up on 72 and is finally stopped in East Dundee after turning on Van Buren Street after turning off of 72. I was actually at my home office when that chase ended, 4 blocks from my house. That was crazy. That was a really interesting case because Matt Nelson, he was in court and he looked like this, freshman in college or something. Absolutely looked. You think a murderer like that, somebody like that would look, I don't know, have some evil aspect to them or something. But no, Matt looked like he was ready to pledge a fraternity.
George, never judge a book by its cover.
Right.
All right. So you say it on the court trial of this case,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Did the people involved with Matt testify against him?
Yes. His sister testified against him, and also his uncle.
But those friends that were involved with them, did they testify?
They were convicted.
Oh, they were convicted.
They were convicted too. That was Armand Brady and.
Well, the names don't matter, but two others were convicted.
2 others were convicted and served terms. Yeah, they were both sentenced to prison. One of they were not charged with murder.
No, accomplice.
Yeah, accomplice. They were like.
But he was convicted.
He was convicted of murder. Yeah.
And do you remember what the sentence was?
Life.
Life in prison.
Yeah. I mean, it was a heinous, brutal murder, and he left his father in the basement. Like you can't imagine doing that. It's like something you see in a movie.
And you know what? People do evil things. You got another quick case? We get about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I've got the.
We got 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
We're winding down. I'll tell you a quick case here.
Yeah, you tell me one.
Here's one. I'm familiar with this one. I wasn't involved as a policeman, but I happened to be in the courthouse when this guy was sentenced. And here's what happens. There's a shooting in Chicago, and guns recovered, gang-related. They trace it back to a woman out in the northwest suburbs here. An older woman. They go to her house, and they say, hey, you have this gun? Oh, that's my deceased husband's gun. It's in the closet. She goes to look in the closet. The gun's not there. So they start interviewing her, and, detectives do good interviews. They find out that a month or 2 months earlier, there was a cable man in the house. That was the only other person that had come to the house that was not a family member. So they called the cable company. Who did you have assigned here? Okay. They grabbed this guy. They told him, hey, man, we're gonna charge you as an accomplice to this murder. Oh, no. He admits to the burglary. So he says, hey.
I remember this case. Yeah, I remember it.
Yeah. He gets better. So how much time do I got?
I got a minute.
I got a minute. So to resolve this, he says, hey, I all I did was steal the gun, and I put it in my trunk, and then it got stolen out of my trunk. He doesn't admit to selling it. It got stolen.
The truck. His truck, yeah.
It got stolen from the guy that stole it. Okay, we believe that story. Well, neither did the judge. The judge, here's a guy with no criminal background. The judge gives him 6 years in prison.
No, 12. He got 12 years.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I thought it was 6.
12. He got 12 years in prison for burglary. And the gun was used in a shooting in which a Chicago police officer was wounded. So they recovered the gun, traced it back to this woman's house. It was a special, 1911 commemorative handgun.
What George is referring to is 1911 is the type of gun.
Yeah.
But thank you, George. Thanks for being on. We're going to bring you back for some more cases. Crime Time. Follow me on YouTube at what, Manu?
YouTube.com at WRMN Radio.
And YouTube.com. And I'm at Facebook, Pelarenos Police Project. Please hit us with a like.
Yeah. Thank you.